What's up, guys? Welcome back to CodeVerse. I hope you have all tried writing the Hello World program that we learned in the previous video. If you haven't watched episode 1 yet, I highly recommend watching it first because today's lesson builds directly on what we learned there. In the previous lecture, we discussed what programming is, what the C programming language is, the history of C, its features, and finally, we wrote our very first C program. But while writing that program, I intentionally didn't explain what each line meant. Why? Because if I had started explaining everything on the first day, it might have felt overwhelming. Today is the day we are going to understand every single line of that program. By the end of this video, you will know exactly why we write each line and what purpose it serves. So without wasting any more time, let us get started. Okay, so this is exactly the same program we wrote in the last lecture. Don't worry if it still looks confusing. After today's lecture, it won't. Let us understand it line by line. Before we even start explaining the code, I want you to notice something. This entire program contains only 5 important parts. Everything else is just spacing to make the code easier to read. Today's goal is to understand these 5 parts. Once you understand them, writing C programs become much more easier. Let us begin with the very first line. Okay, so the first line. When beginners see this line, they usually ask, what is this strange line? Why does it start with the hash symbol? What is stdio? What is .h? Don't worry, we are going to answer all of these questions. First, let us only focus on this part. Notice the hash symbol. Anything that starts with the hash in C is generally a preprocessor directive. Now, don't get scared by the word preprocessor. It sounds complicated, but it is actually very simple. Let us understand it with an example. Imagine you're cooking. Before you start cooking, you collect all the ingredients you need: rice, salt, oil, vegetables. Only after collecting everything do you start cooking. The C compiler does something very similar. Before it actually starts compiling your program, it first processes all the lines beginning with hash. That is why they are called preprocessor directive. The word include literally means bring something into this program. So when we write hash include, we are telling the compiler, please include another file before you start compiling my program. But what files are we including? That is the next question. This part, stdio.h. Let us break this into smaller parts. The word stdio stands for standard input output. Now you might be wondering, what exactly is input and output? Input here means data we give to the computer. For example, typing your name, typing your age, typing just anything. All of these are examples of input. Output means the information the computer shows us. For example, displaying your results, a message, anything. Those are outputs. The file called stdio.h contains many useful functions related to input and output. One of those functions is printf function. And guess what? We are using printf function in this very program. That is why we need stdio.h. Now, let us do something interesting. Instead of simply memorizing this, let us actually test it. Now I am going to remove this line from here. And now let us try to compile this and see what the results are. Now you can see it is showing us a warning and error. Now this warning, this error depends upon your compiler settings. Why? Because we are using printf in here, but we never told the compiler where printf comes from. It is like to call someone whose phone number you never saved. The compiler simply says, I don't know what printf is. So to solve that problem, we include the library that contains the declaration of printf function. And that is exactly why we write hash include stdio.h at the top of our program. Now let us put it back. Okay, so here it is. Perfect. Our program is working once again. See, hello world here. Now let us answer one final question. Why do we write stdio.h in these angle brackets? Well, these angle brackets tell the compiler This is a standard header file that already exists on your system. Later in this course, you will also learn about double quotes. For now, just remember if you are using a standard library like stdio.h, use angle brackets. Now that we have understood the first line, let us move towards the second one. Believe it or not, this is probably the most important line in every C program. Without it, your program simply cannot run. Let us understand why. The first question is, what exactly is main function? To understand this, imagine you have just entered a shopping mall. The mall has many shops, many floors, many restaurants, many people. But before you can go anywhere, you first enter through the main entrance. Everything starts from there. A C program works in almost the same way. Whenever you run your program, the computer first searches for a function called the main function. If it finds it, it starts executing the program from there. If it doesn't, the program cannot start. That is why every C program must have exactly one main function. You can think of it as the entry point of the program. Let us understand this with another example. Imagine your school. When school starts in the morning, students don't randomly go to the classrooms. First, they enter through the main gate. Only then do they move to their classrooms. Similarly, when a C program starts, it doesn't execute random lines. It first enters through the main function. Everything begins from there. Now, many beginners ask another question. If main function starts the program, then what is this in doing here? It's a good question. Let us only focus on this word for now. Int is basically the short for integer. It is a data type. We will study data types in detail later in the course. For now, just remember one thing. When we write int main, we are saying that this function will return an integer value after it finishes its work. And in our program, the integer value is return 0. Don't worry if this feels confusing right now. Once we study functions, this will become crystal clear. For today, just remember int means to return the integer value. Now, let us look at these symbols. These are called parentheses. Since main is a function, functions are always written with parentheses. Later in this course, we will create our own functions. Every single one of them will also use parentheses. So, whenever you see parentheses accompanied by a word before, remember that it is a function. Now, let us move here. These symbols are called curly braces. Now, many beginners ignore them, but they are actually very important. Let us understand why. Imagine you have a school bag. Everything inside the bag belongs to you. Everything outside the bag doesn't. Curly braces work almost the same way. Anything written inside these braces belong to the main function. Everything outside doesn't. Now, let us see the execution flow. First of all, the computer enters through the main function, then it starts reading from top to bottom. First, printf hello world will be executed, then return 0 gets executed. After that, the closing brace will tell the computer the function has finished and the program ends. Notice something important, the computer always executes statements from top to bottom, unless later we use conditions or loops, which you will learn in the future episodes. Now, without looking at your screens, can you tell me what main function does? Very well. So far, we have understood the preprocessor directives, the main function, curly braces. Now, let us move to the line that actually produces output on our screen. This line, the printf function. This is where our program actually starts doing something visible. Now, here is a question for you. How does our computer know that it has to display hello world on screen? Well, the answer is because of printf function. Printf is one of the most commonly used function in C. Its job is very simple. It displays output on the screen. Think of it like a speaker. Imagine you are speaking into a microphone. Whatever you say into the microphone comes out through the speakers. Similarly, whatever we place inside the printf function gets displayed on the screen. Instead of just believing me, let us test it. I am going to change hello world into something else. Let us say, welcome to CodeVerse. Now let us see if it prints this or not. First of all, we will save the file. Now we will run the program. See, instead of hello world, it now prints welcome to CodeVerse. This proves something very important. Printf doesn't care what text you write. It simply prints whatever is inside the quotation mark. Now, notice these symbols. These symbols are called double quotation mark. In C, whenever we want to print text, that text must be written inside the double quotation mark. Now let us intentionally make a mistake. I'm going to remove the quotation marks from here and then let us see that what will happen further. The compiler immediately complains. Why? Because without quotation marks, the compiler no longer thinks it is text. It starts looking for variable name welcome to code words. But we never created those three variables, so it throws an error. This is one of the most common mistakes beginners make. So always remember, whenever you are printing text, write it inside the double quotation mark. Now let us move towards this tiny symbol. It looks very small, but it is extremely important. This symbol is called a semicolon. In C, almost every statement ends with a semicolon. Think of it as a full stop at the end of the sentence. For example, when we write in English, I love programming, the full stop tells us the sentence has finished. Similarly, the semicolon tells the compiler this instruction is complete. Now, let us see what happens if I remove the semicolon. See, the compiler immediately shows an error. It expected a semicolon because the instruction wasn't properly completed. So always remember, whenever you write a statement in C, don't forget the semicolon. Now let us move towards the final line, return 0. Many beginners simply memorize this line, but today we will understand it. Imagine you have completed an exam. Before leaving the examination hall, you submit your paper to the teacher. Only then does the teacher know you have finished. Similarly, after the main function completes its work, it returns a value back. That value is returned to the operating system. That is exactly what this line does. The word returns means send something back. The value 0 generally means the program executed successfully without any problem. So this line is simply informing the operating system my work is complete. Now here is another question. What happens if we remove it? Well, in modern C compilers, your program may still run successfully because if execution reaches the end of the main function, the compiler often assumes return 0 automatically. However, writing it explicitly is considered good programming practice. That is why you will see it in almost every beginner C program. So for now, always include it. So, congratulations, you have just understood every single line of your very first C program. Now, before we end today's lecture, let us look at a few mistakes that almost every beginner makes. Mistake number 1, forgetting the semicolon. If you forget the semicolon, the compiler will report an error because it thinks the statement hasn't ended yet. Mistake number 2, forgetting the double quotes. Without double quotation marks, the compiler thinks welcome to CodeVerse is a variable, not a text. Since we haven't created a variable named welcome to CodeVerse, the compiler reports an error. Mistake number 3 is removing the preprocessor directive. If you remove this line and still uses printf function, the compiler won't know about the function properly, leading to warnings or errors depending on your compiling. So always include the required header file before using library functions. Mistake number 4 is missing the curly braces. If you forget an opening or closing curly brace, the compiler won't know where your function starts or ends. You will often see messages like expected curly brace or expected declaration. Don't panic when you see such messages. Most of the time, it is simply a missing brace or a missing semicolon. Even experienced programmers occasionally make these mistakes, so it is completely normal. The important part is learning how to read and fix compiler errors. Now, a small challenge for you. Now, it is your turn to write some code. I have a simple challenge for you. Open VS Code and create a new C program. Instead of printing hello world, write a program that displays your name, your age, your hobbies, etc. So you can use three separate printf statements for that. Try writing the program yourself instead of copying it. If you get an error, don't worry. Read the error message carefully and try to find the mistake. That is how every programmer learns. Before we finish, I want to tell you one thing. If today's lecture felt a little difficult, that is completely normal. Programming is a new skill. No one becomes an expert after watching one or two videos. The key is consistency. Write code every day, even if it is just for 15 or 20 minutes. The more you practice, the more comfortable you will become. Remember, every professional programmer once wrote their first hello world program too. Now that you understand the structure of a C program, it is time to understand the building blocks that make up every program. In the next episode, we will learn about tokens in C. We will answer questions like what are keywords, what are identifiers, what are constants, what are string literals, what are operators and special symbols, etc. Once you understand tokens, reading C code will become much easier because you will know what every piece of code actually represents. So, don't miss the next lesson. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to CodeVerse. If you have any questions, confusions, or even if your program gives an error, write it in the comments below. I will do my best to help you. Also, complete today's challenge before moving on to episode 3. Practicing is just as important as watching. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy coding.